As with so many of our sessions at this conference, you begin to see things weave in and weave out. And so we're going to pick up one of the points that Matilda and Abhishek make by hearing from our colleagues from the Fondazione Giorgio Cini. Ilenia, Maschietto, and Ilaria Andreoli are going to speak about their project, which takes us back to an earlier reference work by the Prince d'Essling, the Essling project, the census and the copies. Ilenia and Ilaria.
Thank you. Les livres à figures vénitiens de la fin du XVe siècle et du commencement du XVIe, printed in Paris and Florence in 1909-1914, is a census of all illustrated books printed in Venice from the introductions of movable type to 1525. It is organized chronologically, the descriptions of the first illustrated editions of a given title being followed by the descriptions of all subsequent illustrated editions. The 6 hefty volumes of the livres à figures remain today an indispensable reference tool for scholars and bibliographers, as well as for rare booksellers and collectors. The author of this masterpiece was Victor Masséna, Duke of Rivoli, then Prince of Essling, a French scholar and collector who put together in a record time a remarkable collection of illustrated incunable and 16th century books, mostly Venetians, that he described in numerous publications such as the livres à figures, when his own copies are distinguished from those that he merely consulted by a star printed next to the title. Acquired by Vittorio Cini in 1939 and then donated to the foundation he created in memory of his son, almost all Venetian editions once owned by Essling, those with the stars, are now in the library of the Fondazione Giorgio Cini. It is extremely rare, or rather it is unique, that would have remained almost intact such an exceptional collections, remarkable both by the quality of its copies and by its interest as a source for the history of illustrated books and prints in Venice during the Renaissance. The non-Venetian books owned by Essling, other Italian editions as well as French ones, are now mostly in the US, in New York, Boston, Harvard, Yale, UCLA, the Getty, and the Library of Congress. From time to time, some of them appear on the antiquarian market. To be precise, there are 2,889 entries in the census, 2,585 are numbered, 275 are not, and there is some 29 more in the addenda. 488 bear the star and thus come from the Essling collection. Some of them were not found in the holdings of the Fondazione Giorgio Cini, probably because dispersed before the sale, lost in transactions, to quote Folkesman. But thanks to an important gift of 800 15th and 16th century books that entered the library as 2009, many books mentioned in the livres à figures but not owned by Essling are now part of our rare book collection. During the first century of history of printing, Venice was the European capital of the new art. Many typographers flocked on the city to the rest of Europe to work in shops that turned out a majority of the books that circulated during the Renaissance period. The period covered by the Essling census also corresponds to the activity of artists such as Bellini, Carpaccio, Dürer, Leonardo, Giorgione, Titian, and others. The illustrations that adorn the pages of the books described by Essling are those of precious testimony to this extraordinary moment in the history of Venice, and indeed in the history of the printed book. All scholars, librarians, and collectors that have to deal with Venetians incunable and 16th century books known of the Essling census, be it only as a reference. But it is also of great value to art historians, booksellers, print experts, and collectors interested in the Venetian Renaissance. As mentioned before, the 6th volume of the census presents the editions in the shape of a genealogical tree, where all successive editions follow the first one described. The trunk, so to speak, it is the work title. The limbs are all the different editions presented in chronological order, while the leaves are the copies, the material objects. Have a look at this Venetian woodcut from Artus Sanitatis, Essling number 1723, slightly adapted for this presentation. It represents the Divina Commedia. The leaves correspond to copies identified in one or more libraries, as described by Essling, while those in the shape of stars represent the copies owned by Essling, now at the Fondazione Giorgio Cini. Because of the unique connoisseurship of the author, the census is much more than a mere list of illustrated Venetian editions. Thanks to its abundant notes in which he gives detailed descriptions of illustration that eminently compares with those present in other editions, and thanks to this project now in progress, it will be possible to multiply and interconnect the mass of information present in the census.
The unique character of the Essling census made us wonder whether it would be possible to create a digital tool that would allow easy navigation among the editions described and would link the Essling descriptions with major reference tools. With us contact Regesta, with whom we plan to publish the data in open and shared format with controlled vocabulary and formal ontologies, in relation with other open data tools that have the same sharing features. Bearing in mind the indication of the European Digital Library, and well aware that library catalogues cannot be accessed through search engine, we decided to base the entire project on the RDF standard and linked open data technology. We also decided to use the semantic web tools because they facilitate the discovery of new information assets. With this project, thus, we produce a set of metadata with wide granularity levels, describing, in accordance with the FRBR model, the resources in the 3 levels of abstraction: work, instance, and item, that correspond to our trunks, limbs, and leaves. RDF defines relations between objects through triples, creating content of a simple relationship, according to the subject-predicate-object model. From every bibliography entry, we extract and triplify information about the identification of the editions. Next, each entry is linked to the same edition as described in other national and international catalogues, such as SBN, Edissedici, ISTC. Likewise, we link the Cini copies with the descriptions in May, in Archivio Possessori, and so enriching the Cell Thesaurus. This interconnection will be achieved through use of natural language processing tools that will extract the entities present in the entries. The final result of this project will be a portal through which to query the Essling census by author, printer, title, place, date. And compared to the original printed one, the Essling load will be enriched by the bibliographic information that, in about a century, bibliographers and librarians have produced. An information made uniform, standardized, open, and shareable through the electronic catalogues. Because of the unique character of its rare book collection, and because of its constant policy that aims at developing new tools to make it more accessible, the library of the Fondazione Giorgio Cini is the institution best suited to develop with LOD a new relationship between the census and the collection. Before proceeding with the simulation, I would like to thank the team of Regesta, and in particular Silvia Mazzini, our colleagues of the Digitization Center, and the graphic designer Alessandro Antonuccio, who made it possible in record time. And let me to thank also Cristina Dondi and her entire Circuit team for the invitation to present our project to this conference and for the proficus relationship and professional exchange that has been created. It is thanks to the continuous and tight collaboration between the various and different knowledge related to the hand-printed book that it has been possible to create a digital tool based on the latest information technologies, able to respond to the needs of librarians as well as to those of scholars. We are particularly happy to have developed an efficient working relationship between the two us, an art historian and a rare book librarian, and between us, on the other side, data architects and computer scientists. For this reason, we can talk with full rights of a project in digital humanities. Our achievement is the result of efforts made by very different actors to learn the vocabularies and tools of the others, with the common goal of publishing and sharing data for the entire scientific community. To give you an idea of what we are talking about, today we are able to show you a simulation from our back office, but please do consider that it is a back office project with raw data. In the context of the Printing Revolution Conference, we chose a very well-known title, published both as incunable and 16th century book. It is the Cetam Fasciculus Medicinae. In the census, Essling listed 9 illustrated editions, published in Venice from 1491 to 1522, and he owned 3 of them, the 3 stars, now in the Cini collection. We remind you that the census ends with the first quarter of the 16th century. The back office for managing the data is XDAMS, a multimedia and document platform designed and developed by Regesta, available under an open source license. XDAMS is able to work with the repository RDF and allows the complete management of the load process. From the data extracted from the Essling census in PDF format, we realize a translation in RDF XML, employing the specific ontology and employing the specific ontologies. This allows importation into the back office. In the back office, it is possible to explore a relationship between the resources through a graphic representation that reflects the status of the bibliographic resources, the work title, Fasciculus Medicinae, and all its editions described by Essling. Going to the edition entry, we can explore the information related to it as the printer, the format, the date. In XDAMS, we edit and add content such as bibliography for edition and bibliography for the specific copy. We capture information from specialized databases. We add the links to other web resources. We enrich the linked data cloud and publish all this content on an endpoint Sparkle that allows data query and navigation through the semantic browsers. In this case, this edition is represented by a copy in the Fondazione Cini collection. This visual tool allows us to see the data in an easier way, but I remind you that it's not the final portal, it's just our raw data visualized through LOD view. The result of using LOD technologies in combination with the semantic web, it's easy to see looking, for example, at the author, and at the author's links with the corresponding digital resources in the linked data cloud, present, for example, in DBpedia, Wikidata, and VIAF. Clicking on the items entry with the shelf mark and other copies information, for example, about the typical Essling binding, going on the specific copy, a link to the digital facsimile available to the public will appear. Another development in providing access to the collection of rare books in the Fondazione Giorgio Cini indeed is the digitization of the entire collection, collaborating with the new Center for Digitization of Cultural Heritage, inaugurated a few months ago on the island of San Giorgio Maggiore. We are working on the guidelines for a standard model. Another example of meeting point of different skills. where the digital world meets the humanistic knowledge. Concerning the digitization, copies owned by Essling have the priority, and I will treat the first. They will be linked to their descriptions in the Essling Load census. And especially for this meeting, we digitize our 3 Essling copies of Fasciculus Medicina, currently exposed at the Scuola Grande di San Marco for the Tintoretto exhibitions. And what we have been able to show you is the entire process coming full cycle, as announced in our title, from the census to the copies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilaria and Ilenia. I think that at this point in the proceedings, all I can do is be a fellow magician and pull coffee out of a hat. I invite you to go and ingest some caffeine and then speak with our presenters here and with Lillian and with Susie. I'm sure there are lots of questions. Thank you all very much.